Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on one of the most foundational disciplines in professional design software. We're talking about layer management in CAD.
hmm
You sent us a request for a technical deep dive into organization, and it might sound a little dry,
It can, yeah.
but the reality is that mastering layers is the difference between an efficient collaborative project and, well, a complete data disaster.
Oh, it truly is.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. If you're spending half your time scrolling through 100 randomly named layers, just trying to figure out which line belongs where, you're not designing.
Yeah.
You're just debugging.
Right.
You should think of layers not just as like filing folders, but as the actual DNA of your drawing file. They don't just hold information. They define the visual language of the entire project.
So our mission today, which we've distilled from your sources, is a powerful 5-step strategic shortcut.
Roadmap.
Exactly. This is the sequence that takes layer management from a reactive chore to a proactive, automated part of your design workflow. We want to make sure every single element you draw is filed, organized, and visually defined correctly from the moment you place that first line.
Yeah, we're moving beyond just knowing how to draw a line, and we're focusing on knowing how to classify it. This is the kind of strategic thinking you need for these high-stakes projects, where clarity and, consistency are completely non-negotiable.
Okay, let's jump in. We need to start with the mechanics, but let's treat the first 2 steps as a single point of entry. It's kind of the initiation sequence,
Right.
accessing the Layer Properties Manager, and immediately creating that new classification.
Exactly. For any experienced CAD user opening the control panel, the Layer Properties Manager, it's just pure muscle memory. You either hit the icon in the Home tab of the ribbon, or you use the absolute standard command. You type layer and hit enter. We assume you know how to access it.
Sure.
The real efficiency gain, though, comes in the very next part.
Which is step 2, creating the new layer. And instead of clicking around, the fastest way to do this is a keyboard shortcut, Alt+N.
So simple, but so effective.
It's simple, but it's the gateway to organization. You see that new blank line item pop up, maybe it's called layer 1 or something,
Layer 0.
and that's where the strategy really begins.
And what's crucial here is to recognize that you shouldn't just draw on layer 0 and then decide later where things belong. That's the amateur move.
Right, the cleanup after the fact approach.
Exactly. A professional CAD workflow demands that you classify the element before you draw it.
Yeah.
So that blank line isn't just a placeholder. It's an immediate demand for, clear semantics.
So once we have that blank, unclassified placeholder, we immediately run into this critical strategic issue of semantics, which is step 3, naming and organizing the layers clearly.
Yes.
This is where most drawings fail when they start to scale up.
This is arguably the most vital step for long-term collaboration, for auditing, for everything. If you look at a project with 50 layers, and 20 of them are named line, red, layer 1 copy.
Old walls.
Old walls, exactly. The file becomes instantly unmanageable, especially for someone who didn't create it.
You're absolutely right. You need to know exactly what's inside the layer just by reading the name. You shouldn't ever have to click it and isolate it just to find out.
No, never.
And the sources provided those excellent examples tailored for architectural plans, which really demonstrate the power of standardization.
Okay, so let's break down that convention. They suggested A walls for structural elements,
Right.
A furniture for interior blocks, and A dimensions for all the measurements. The immediate insight here is that the naming convention isn't just descriptive.
It's hierarchical.
It is hierarchical, exactly.
And that hierarchy is the key. Tell us a bit more about what those prefixes, the A in this case, what are they actually communicating in a professional environment?
So that prefix, whether it's A for architecture or S for structural, M for mechanical,
For electrical, right?
right, it instantly categorizes the discipline and the content type. This follows established standards, like the National CAD Standard, the NCS. The NCS actually suggests a 6-character key structure precisely so that engineers, architects, designers on different teams can instantly filter and isolate the data that's relevant to their field.
Wow, so that raises the technical bar significantly. You're not just naming a wall.
No.
You're embedding project metadata directly into the layer name. Why does that become so critical when you enter a collaborative workflow?
Okay, so in collaboration, your drawing is often externally referenced, or X-refed, into other disciplines' master files. So if my electrical file references your architectural file, I need to be able to instantly turn off all your furniture layers to reduce the visual clutter.
Without accidentally turning off something important.
Right, without turning off your primary walls or dimensions. If you don't use a standard like a furniture, but instead you call it chair stand stuff,
Yeah, that's not going to work.
my software can't reliably filter it. Standardization ensures that interoperability and, honestly, the security across all disciplines.
So bad naming doesn't just annoy the user.
No, it's worse.
It actually breaks the ability to audit, hide, and filter data, which can lead to serious drawing errors when disciplines overlap. The naming convention is effectively the index for the entire digital document.
Precisely. And once we've established that critical foundation, a clear, standardized name, then we can move into step 4. This is where the drawing truly gains its visual intelligence. Customizing the visual properties.
Step 4. This is where we stop talking about, filing cabinets and start talking about communication. You're dictating exactly what the eye sees on the page, and by extension, what the builder or the manufacturer is going to interpret.
We're moving from the logical structure, which is the name, to the aesthetic and functional properties. Your sources highlight 3 essential properties that every professional layer must define: color, line type, and line weight.
Okay, let's start with color. The source suggested something simple, like blue for walls. But for a professional deep dive audience, we know color is rarely what the final print looks like. It's about more than just aesthetics, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The color is usually the plotting key. In a majority of professional environments, drawings are printed in monochrome, using what's called a CTB file.
A color-dependent plot-style table.
Exactly. This means that color 1, which is red, might always plot at 0.5 millimeter thickness. Color 2, yellow, might plot at 0.25 millimeter. The on-screen color is not what you see on paper.
It's a flag.
It's a visual flag that tells the software which plotting rule to apply. So if you pick blue for walls, you're not choosing a nice blue hue. You're choosing the specific CTB slot that corresponds to the required wall thickness.
That is a critical distinction. The color dictates thickness and intensity in the final print, not just on your screen. Okay, moving to the second property, line type. This defines whether the line is continuous or broken.
And line type communicates the line's relationship to the viewer or the ground plane. A continuous line usually represents something visible, something above grade. But if we're drawing hidden elements like the edge of a ceiling grid that's hidden by drywall or a foundation footing below the ground, we need a dashed or a dotted line. The source rightly emphasizes this.
So what's a technical challenge with line types that often trips up even experienced users?
Line type scale, LTS.
Yes.
You can assign a dashed line type to a layer, but if your drawing units are set too small or your viewport scale is huge, those dashes might just look like a solid line on the screen.
Or on the final print, which is worse.
Which is much worse.
Right.
A professional has to constantly manage the overall global line type scale and the scale within individual viewports to make sure the dashes are clearly visible and sized appropriately on the final document. If you don't, the intent of that hidden line is completely lost.
That's a great insight into those scaling challenges. Finally, let's tackle the third property. Line weight. This is the physical thickness assigned to the layer, measured in millimeters or inches on the final output.
Line weight is the ultimate communication tool for hierarchy, for priority. Think about reading a map. The highway is always thicker than a side street.
Sure.
In construction drawings, the load-bearing wall must be visually heavier than a thin partition wall or some simple hatching. We use a heavy line weight, say 0.5 millimeter, for the load-bearing concrete shell, and a thin weight, maybe 0.15 millimeter, for delicate text annotations.
So the distinction isn't decorative at all, it's structural.
It's entirely structural.
If a contractor looks at a plan and can't immediately distinguish the heavy lines holding up the roof from the thin lines of a non-structural closet, they're relying only on text notes, and that just introduces risk.
So much risk.
The visual hierarchy of line weight is basically a safety mechanism.
Precisely. It's the visual stacking of information. You're using color to trigger the plot style, line type to communicate visibility, and line weight to communicate structural importance. Once these 4 properties, name, color, line type, line weight, are set correctly for the layer, we transition to the final immediate step.
So we've accessed the manager, created the layer, named it according to professional standards, and applied all the visual rules. Step 5 is the payoff. It's ensuring this meticulously crafted layer is the active one for the drawing process.
This is the critical moment of commitment. All that preparation is pointless if you just go back to drawing on layer 0.
Right.
You need to tell the software, okay, I am now classifying every single line I draw under these specific rules.
And the action is so straightforward, yet it's so definitive. You just double-click the layer name in the Layer Properties Manager.
That's it. That double click is the trigger for automation. And the immediate visual feedback that confirms your success is that little green check mark appearing right next to the layer name.
That green check mark is your signal that the system is engaged. Everything you draw from that moment on a line, an arc, a reference block, anything, will automatically inherit all the complex organization and visual intelligence you just defined. You
Exactly.
don't have to think about thickness or color or line type again until you're ready to switch layers.
It truly transforms organization from a cognitive burden into an automated background process.
The designer can now focus solely on spatial geometry and solving design problems, confident that the classification and visual standards are being enforced by the software itself.
So that is the complete sequence, the 5-step strategic shortcut to building a professional, high-clarity CAD file. Access the manager, create the classification, apply standardized naming, customize the visual intelligence, and then finally double-click to set the active layer and get that green check mark.
It's a sequence that ensures your organization is proactive, not reactive. It stops that messy habit of drawing everything and then trying to sort it all out later.
Which is guaranteed to lead to errors.
Guaranteed, every time. We spend a lot of time reinforcing the necessity of standardization in step 3 and the strategic depth of visual properties in step 4. These really are the steps that define a professional file.
So let's leave you with this final thought that builds on that idea of standardization. If the operational clarity, and maybe even the safety, of a huge construction document relies entirely on the consistency of these naming conventions and visual properties, what mechanisms need to be in place beyond the personal discipline of one designer to ensure that no one ever accidentally deviates?
That's a great question. Think about this. How do professionals audit their layer lists?